Hello, I'm Victoria and I've given myself the cardigan curse. Welcome to the 10th episode of my knitting video podcast. My first finished object is one that I've had on my needles for a little while now, and it's the Peacock cardigan by Lace or Laynit. This is a stunning circular lace yoke cardigan with a crew neck. I love how it's turned out, but also it's had some issues, and I think there are certain things that I would really like to fix with this thing, but I don't really know how. And at this point I think I've knitted too many cardigans because I'm starting to be cursed, and each one that I knit is just starting to have more and more issues for some reason. It might just be because I'm knitting from like designers that aren't petite knit, but don't know. I'm absolutely in love with the yarn that I used for this. This is Knitting for Olive merino and soft silk mohair held together in the colour Dusty Moose. And it's this really stunning brown grey kind of colour that's neither one nor the other, but it's just perfect in between depending on the lighting, depending on what you wear with it. Instructions for this have been quite confusing. Some stitch counts were weirdly worded and I had to recount my stitches when I was splitting for the sleeves. When you had the raglan it would say X number of stitches, marker stitch, X number of stitches, and I initially thought it was marker, like stitch marker. It turns out that marker stitch means that you have a stitch between two markers. I've not seen that before really, so I got a bit confused. This pattern has a lot of short rows which start I think like here, so they're just under the yoke, but they go up really far out the front, which is really nice because it helps with the fit. This still doesn't fit me perfectly. I actually thought this would be the perfect like fit of a round yoke cardigan, but around the shoulders it's a little bit tight. This button just, it looks like it's gonna pop and there's quite a lot of gapping here as well, and even when it's on a hanger, like obviously I don't hang my knits but I wanted to show you, that's a little bit annoying. But yeah, even the short rows were written out a little bit weirdly. It will tell you how to do the short rows on row A, and then in row B it will say same as row A, instead of just repeat for an X number of rows, it will just repeat itself like randomly, and I think it's a lot of waffle in places that doesn't need waffle, and it ends up being a little confusing, but in certain places it doesn't have enough explanations, so it's definitely not a beginner friendly pattern at all. It might just be a little bit frustrating. I think some sizes have some issues as well with the charts and things, so look out for that. The one thing I was really worried about with this pattern is that the yoke would be too short, and like where the lace ends I was really worried that it would be too high up and I wouldn't really know because of like my gauge and stuff. It turns out that the pattern actually tells you at the end of the lace like yoke part, and then it tells you to like knit a bit longer if you haven't gotten to that length, which is very useful. And I kind of wish other patterns said that with like raglans and things, like you can calculate it, but it's really useful to have just written down. I've knit many raglans before and I've got like different raglan patterns. I love the petite knit style of writing where she explains how to do everything perfectly and like every part of the pattern. I found it a little bit like hard with this one because it doesn't hold your hand at all, and that's why I think it wouldn't be easy for beginners. Even on the raglan it doesn't tell you how to divide for the body and sleeves. If you've knit raglans before it's kind of intuitive where you put the raglan stitches, but I always cannot remember whether they go with the sleeves or with the back and body. Yeah, I always have to check, and this pattern doesn't tell you, so you kind of have to figure it out. It will just be useful if the pattern said it. For the sleeves I picked up slightly more stitches than the pattern tells you to, and then as I normally do I just decreased on the next few rows. Did I? Yeah, I did decrease on the next row or two to get back to the like original suggested number of stitches. I like doing that because it ends up not having holes where you picked up your stitches, because otherwise you just sometimes have to go through it with some yarn and close up any holes, but this makes it a little bit more seamless. Also on the sleeves I actually followed the decreases from my April cardigan because I don't really like the way certain patterns tell you to do decreases on the body. You can really see it on my Robinson wrap cardigan. I really don't like when the decreases are quite spaced out. I don't like when there's stitches in between the decreases. I really like how crisp it looks on my April cardigan. The decreases are right next to each other. They're like essentially invisible, or they just form like a tiny bump. I mean, decreases normally would. So it's just a little bit more seamless and a little bit more elevated in my opinion. I think this way of doing it is just a lot more intuitive as well. You just go to the beginning and end of round. I wasn't the biggest fan of the cuffs on the original design either because they were like really short. I ended up modifying the cuffs to look more like the ones on my April cardigan, and I think I knit like 7 centimeters of rib essentially and then bound off in Italian bind off. It's not tubular bind off, you just do the sewn bind off rather than knitting a double knitted row beforehand. I don't like doing that, it just takes too long. Tubular bind off looks a bit too bulky for me, and I really don't think they don't like flare out or anything, especially when you wear it, like you can't see anything. So I really like the way the sewn bind off looks. I also added some decreases right before the cuffs because essentially I calculated from the gauge how long in terms of centimeters the distances between the decreases would be on the sleeves, and then I knit to that length rather than knitting the set amount of stitches that it tells you in the pattern. Following that, it actually ended up being very long. I didn't even do the final decrease. Well, I suppose it's because I also did the long cuff, so that would add, but I still knit these a little bit shorter than I thought they would be. Because this is knitting for olive yarn, it also tends to shorten and stretch widthwise, but I'm finding that this colour is behaving differently than other colours by Knitting for Olive that I've used. This has not like shrunk lengthwise, it actually increased with length with blocking, which I'm really kind of not used to with Knitting for Olive. And also this yarn bleeds quite a lot. I didn't even soak it for that long. Like as soon as I put it in the wash, the wash has gone murky, like grey kind of colour, and I had the same situation with my Rosamond tag, so I think it's just this colour specifically that does that. I'll see how I feel with wearing this cardigan because the sleeves have really come out quite long, and also the body, I knit it cropped compared to what the pattern says, and it's still like a full-length cardigan on me. I don't know whether a lay knit has a really long torso or it's meant to fit really long, but I don't think so. From the pattern it doesn't look like it's meant to be that long. I'm a little bit sad that it hasn't come out cropped because I wanted it to end exactly where my jeans end or slightly below, but it ended up being like around my hips. I mean, it's still cute, but it's not exactly the look I was going for, and I think I liked this cardigan more before I blocked it than now that it's been blocked, so it's a little bit of a shame. I'm not sure how much wear I'll get out of it, but I hope I can maybe fix it a little bit, or maybe I'll just grow to like it over time. I actually did a double knitted button band on this cardigan. They look a little bit more elegant, a little bit more seamless, and my 1x1 rib doesn't look very neat, especially on button bands, and I find that they tend to stretch out quite a lot as well. I can't get them to look very neatly, especially with crew necks. It's really hard for me to figure that out. I did go for the 1x1 rib along the top edge of the cardigan. It starts with the ribbing and I couldn't be bothered to figure out how to modify that because I just wanted to start knitting on the lace. I decided to just keep that and then do the seamless kind of double knit edges on the body. You can see how gaping this is. I've actually not worn this at all yet because I've put on the buttons literally just before filming this. I knit one of the button band sides on 3mm needles, but then I realised it's a little bit floppy. I can't tell which side it is now after blocking. Oh no, it's the front, because essentially the front has come out a little bit longer than the back because I ended up knitting the other side on 2.75mm needles. I didn't like the way it looked before blocking. It was just a little bit too floppy for me. It wasn't bad enough for me to go back and fix it, because I was just tired of knitting on this thing, and I think it's still come out fine apart from buttons. Like, I don't know how to sew on buttons on cardigans. They never turn out well. Like, they always end up gapey and weird, and I always end up having too much length along the bottom button, and then it just goes very gapey. I have the same issue on my favourite April cardigan, which I think is the best one in terms of sewing on the buttons job that I did. If you have any tips on how to sew on buttons so that they are evenly spaced out without like any gaping, then I would really find that useful. I tried doing it by just placing them evenly, but then they were gaping, so now I sew on the first one at the top, then I try to like see how it would lay with the next one, and then I see how it would lay with the next one, and I do them like one by one, trying them on. But then this ends up happening, and I'm not sure whether that's because I did knit the button band on a different gauge on one side, or it was because of my button sewing on situation. On this piece I also did something slightly different than I usually do, which is I left a lot more space before where the button is so that it doesn't squeeze the other side of the button band, because I typically get like a lot of bulging out when I close my buttons. Like on this one, on the top one, you can kind of see it, the button band pulls to the side, and I think that's because I just don't leave enough room for the button band to go in between the button and the other side of the button band. So I think this has helped quite a lot. Now I've got the gaping issue. If you've got any tips, please let me know down in the comments. But if you're interested on how I did the double knit button band, I cast on 11 stitches in Italian cast on, tubular cast on. Buttonholes are 4 stitches wide, and I followed the step-by-step cardigan tutorial for like a seamless buttonhole because I didn't want to have like a million ends to weave in. And my final modification was that I added a crochet chain to the neckline. You can see it better on the inside of the cardigan. On the outside, I didn't realise that's what crochet chains did, because this was my first time ever adding a crochet chain, because I was a bit worried this would be too stretchy and it would like really stretch out over time. It does give like a little pearl bump edge where you pick up the stitches, and I don't know if that's something that normally happens or if I did it wrong, but fortunately it kind of blends in with the lace, because the lace does have like pearl bumps in between. Meet Winnie the Frog. This was an anniversary present for my partner. We live long medium distance, and last year I knit him for his birthday, I think, or maybe the year before. I made him a little froggie which he named Freddie, and he's been taking it everywhere with him whenever he goes on a holiday and stuff. But ever since I knit him that, he's been saying that Freddie's a bit lonely and he needs a little girlfriend, so I made him a little buddy. And this is Winnie, because Winnie, Fred, Freddie, Fred, Winnie, Fred, Winnie. Winnie is a chunky boy compared to Freddie. I knit her on the same needle size as I knit Freddie, but I forgot that I knit the first frog using fingering weight yarn rather than DK weight yarn. So I made this holding knitting frog of merino and soft silk mohair together, and the green is the colour Dusty Artichoke and then the white is Limestone. That has changed the gauge massively, and she is massive compared to him. She's like a little bit of a giant, or he's like a baby compared to her, but I think it's still cute. They just look adorable together. I did nick this from my boyfriend just to talk about it in this podcast, but I have given it to him. He's had it in his room. This was actually my post-exam knit. Like, as soon as I finished my final exam, I just spent an entire day, like a Saturday, knitting this little froggie. It was a journey. I knit the legs slightly differently. I didn't do as many decreases for the joins as she does, primarily because I just wanted to be able to put some wire through them, and I have like pipe cleaners to put through, which would be visible if I did it the way she does them. I decreased down to 3 stitches rather than like 1 or 2 that she says. The wire, I just put it through like that, essentially, through the body, so both hands are 1 wire and then both leggies are 1 wire as well, and then I sewed them in with like my ends, I weaved them in. Essentially you can slightly see how her hands are covered because on the other side they just look like normal knitting. The wire was poking out because I wanted the hands to also have wire in them. Like I didn't want it to end here. I think it's a bit nicer when you can like pose them. She was holding a little flower. I took a picture with a little daisy. I thought it was adorable. Yeah, I think the wire just adds a lot. And I used my scrap yarn as filler. I usually, when I cut off ends off of yarn, I'll have like this much or maybe this much. I always chuck it into my like project bag or my little supplies bag, and then I forget about it, and then a few months later I'll stuff it all into one box, and then I end up with like a little pile of ends that have no purpose, and then I end up using them as stuffing because I don't think I would be able to do like a scrappy project with like tying them together. Oh, that would be horrible. And you can't really see because I think I used beige yarn, but I did try using slightly darker yarn, and that does definitely like peek through the white because it's not entirely opaque and it is a little bit holy. I tried going for like lighter scraps, and then on the body I don't think I cared that much because I knew that it would have like a little clothing accessory situation going on. I had some issues with the safety eyes. Essentially when you put in safety eyes, it's like a little pin that you put through the yarn, and then you've got like a little backing and you just chuck it on, and they're safety eyes because then you can't take the back off, so you can't take off the eye out. I'm sure that you can take it off because apparently they're not very safe for babies. It was a journey to take it off. Initially I put on the eye in the wrong place and I put it on way too tightly, so it was like that on the froggie. Then I spent about an hour trying to take that eye off as well. It has taken me a lot longer than I anticipated, and initially when I knitted this frog it also took me a lot longer than I anticipated. It's not as easy and quick as you think, but it is like a one-day project. It's just not mindless and smooth to knit as like a stockinette sweater is, but it's still a really cute project and it was really fun to knit, and it was perfect for like after exam knitting to just like de-brain myself, just focus on doing my silly little knitting project. She's got a little battle scar from where the safety eye was. I'm not sure if you can even see it. Yeah, it's right there. I tried pulling the stitches around it, but it didn't go perfectly. It adds personality. I knit this using my new Chalgu needles on 3mm needles. It was like so easy to knit, I think, because they're a lot sharper than my Knit Pros. It was just so nice when I was doing like knit 3 together, and I didn't have any issues with it because they just go through so smoothly, and I think the Chalgus would be perfect for lace. Well, they were lovely for the lace I was doing on the peacock cardigan. I have a project that I knit on different needles in this podcast that was a lot less pleasant to knit. The little t-shirt Winnie is wearing is just a modified sweater for Frog by Claire Garland or Dot Pebbles. It's the same designer that knit the frog. I essentially just shortened the sleeve. Instead of putting them on hold, I just cast them off instantly, and then I sewed the back together as normal. I actually didn't mattress stitch it, so it looks a little bit ugly, but I was getting quite lazy. But then it's covered by the cute little dungarees. These are just scraps of my knitting for olive merino in the colour Purple Unicorn, which is just my favourite knitting for olive colour, and I thought Winnie would be like me. She's wearing my favourite knitting for olive colours. And the dungaree pattern is by Knit on Etsy. I was really drawn to it because of the cute little detail on the back, how the dungarees are like crisscrossed, and I just thought it was so adorable. I really liked how like thin the straps were. They're just crochet chains. It's a really simple pattern, but it was so quick. I think it took me like 20 minutes 30 to do the little dungarees. They were so quick. The sweater isn't as easy because you're doing like things all the time because it's such a tiny sweater, and I also modified them slightly because I knit them a little bit shorter and just cast them off straight away around the knees point. I didn't block anything. It's not too big of an issue. She's just like a little froggie that's sitting down all the time, and it's adorable. And the dungarees are knitted in the colour Dusty Moose. My next finished object, which will look slightly better on B-roll than it does look here because I haven't blocked these, and these are my ruffle socks by Petite Knit. I finished these literally last night as I was yapping with my friend Anne-Sophie on FaceTime. Realistically, I didn't really follow the petite knit pattern for this. I only wanted the pattern for the ruffle because I didn't want to figure it out myself, kind of for the stitch count, but I modified the heel flap completely. I think the original pattern has German short rows, whereas I much prefer knitting heel flap and gusset, so I did that, just stockinette heel flap, like a typical gusset that I would normally do. I think I followed the instructions from Petal Drop Socks by Florence Miller, which I always follow for socks, and the same with the toe. I just did a wedge toe. You don't really need the pattern if you want to knit these. The ruffle is quite easy, I'm sure you can Google it, but I just wanted it for the ease of knitting, and it is a really cute ruffle. I was thinking that if I were to re-knit these again, I would probably cast on using Julie's Magic Cast On, and then when you like join them together, I would increase out rather than decreasing after like casting on a load of stitches. Unfortunately, my friend Aunt Sophie has tried that and she said that it was a little bit of a painful experience. I saw her struggle with it during our FaceTime call. Then my plan goes to nothing. It's quite painful if you're doing it on like blunt needles. I was knitting these on my Addies. They're great sock knitting needles, but definitely not for like knit two togethers all the time on like a cast on edge. It was painful and I was dreading it for the second sock. That's why I also didn't like really want to do the second sock for quite a while. That's why they've taken me so long. You can really see the difference between the tips. Addie unicorns are very dull at the end and then the knit pros are much sharper, but I've never had issues knitting like lace and that sort of thing on my knit pros, but I only have 2.5mm needles with the Addies. It's not great for lace or decreases, but then I don't knit that many sock on 2.5mm needles. I think maybe it would have been a lot easier if my needles weren't so dull. I knit these in Cygnet Truly Wool Ridge 4-ply sock. That's a very long yarn name, in the colour 246 Oatmeal. It's this really lovely greyish kind of colour. It's just my favourite. I love my greyshes. It's really neutral. It's not like warm toned or anything. It might be quite cool toned actually, like if you compare it to my skin tone. It'll be a lovely addition to my knit sock drawer. I might have to do a little bit of sock surgery on these because on the first sock I realised that it was a little bit too long for my liking, and then the second one I decided to knit a little bit shorter, but it ended up being not that much shorter. Like it's a few centimetres shorter, but when I put it on it's not really that noticeable. If I scrunch it up in my shoe probably it would be fine. I'll see how they look after blocking. My gauge has changed so drastically between these socks. Like this one's massive compared to this one. I don't know what happened there, and I noticed that it's changed a lot as I was knitting on the foot as well compared to this, and I have a lot of like rowing out, and I think it will be fine once it's blocked. It will probably look a lot neater. Also, I have this issue in most of my socks on one side of the socks where I get a little hole. I have tried picking up more stitches around that area. Like it works on one side, but then the other side is quite gapey still. But I think it's just where my tension, basically where the purl slip stitch is, the tension is different than where the knit slip stitches. I did try like holding it tighter on those rows, but it hasn't seemed to make a difference. I'm not too bothered about it, but it is slightly annoying. No, it's still visible on the other sock. They'll be cute. They'll be on my feet, doesn't matter too much. In my spring knitting plans, I originally said that I wanted to knit a tiny scarf, and originally it was meant to be like Sophie's scarf by Petite Knit, but then I saw the Poet Scarf pattern by Sari Nordland and I totally fell in love and I had to knit it. It's this really stunning lace pattern, relatively small, but it's not a tiny scarf. It will be perfect for like autumn and springtime to wear, just like to protect against the wind, but like when I don't need too much warmth. Perfect and absolutely stunning. The yarn I'm using for this is actually Cardiff Cashmere Classic in the colour 657 Gospel. I really wanted to try this yarn out and I thought a scarf would be the perfect way to do it. This one really didn't require that much yarn. I think I only bought 2 balls, which should be perfect. I might be short a few meters, but I'm hoping I won't be. I'm praying to the knitting gods that they allow me to have enough yarn to finish my scarf and I don't have to buy more of this very expensive yarn. This colour is really beautiful. It's this like slightly dusty purple. It's very similar to the Filcolana Peruvian Highland wool in the colour Lavender Grey Melange. They are very similar. This is a little bit more dusty and than the Cardiff Cashmere, and I think they both suit me quite well. There was another colour that I can't remember the name of that I was thinking of getting. I took like some pictures with them against my face and I thought this was a lot more neutral leaning, whereas the other colour was very cool toned and it was maybe a little bit too bright. It was like a light summer, like a very bright one, and I really wanted like a fun purple bright colour. I didn't want like a beige scarf. This yarn is so soft, and I know everyone that knits with Cardiff Cashmere says this. You don't understand the softness of it, and it's like the softness of alpaca and mohair without the prickliness and the itchiness. So soft on the neck, like I don't think it will irritate me at all, and I have quite sensitive skin, so like mohair on my neck is a big no-no. That's kind of why I also wanted to try out the cashmere. I didn't want to knit it in just like merino held single, and I knew that I could not handle alpaca or mohair around my neck. Yeah, this was just a perfect yarn choice. I've looked on people's projects on Ravelry and I think I should be okay. Like other people have used less than 2 balls of this. I bought this yarn at the Beautiful Knitters store because I didn't want to order it online. Even for a scarf for 2 balls, it's quite a pricey yarn compared to like knitting for Olive or Drops or something. I thought I would like to see the colours in person. Honestly, that store is so lovely. They do only stock like expensive yarns, so like Noro and Isia, Knitting for Olive, and obviously Cardiff Cashmere. If you are interested in that sort of yarn, then it's a lovely store in London to have a look at. It's in Pimlico, so it was very out of my way because my partner does live in London. It's a completely different side of London than Pimlico, which is like the posh area, like near Notting Hill and stuff. We ended up going there, and then we watched the F1 in like one of the bars near the shop, and it was lovely. I was just knitting on another project in there actually, but it was very cute. I actually knitted like 20 rows of this chart originally. It was coming out weirdly, like it just was not looking good, and then I realised that I was knitting the I-cord edge wrong, and I was actually slipping the yarn instead of doing like a pearl edge around it. It was like bulging out and all of my stitches were looking like that. I'm actually really glad I made that mistake, and I realised it like relatively soon and decided to just frog it and redo it. I also was knitting the lace chart wrong. This is my second ever flat lace knitted pattern. So the first one was the peacock cardigan, because previously I've only knitted lace in the round, and if you knit lace in the round you just go the same way, like you read each row this way, you just go from the same side. But for flat knitted lace you have to go like this and then like this, which was not clear to me at all, and I had no idea until I made that mistake, because I had like a hold on moment. This lace isn't looking correct because my stitches weren't matching up, so I googled how to knit lace flat. Turned out that you're meant to do like a little type thing. Now I'm knitting it correctly and it's turning out so beautiful. I'm really happy with this knit. It's just so stunning. It reminds me of peacock feathers, but I think it's like leaves or something. It's very engaging, but you can watch things in the background. I was watching a movie called Brooklyn while I was knitting on this. Once you finish the chart, and then you move on to the next one, which is very nice because you're not like repeating a chart and you don't have to clear it and stuff. It's very clear, apart from if you haven't knitted lace flat, obviously. But now you know. If you do end up knitting lace flat for the first time, you can learn from my mistakes. The lace looks quite intimidating, like it would be too hard to knit, but it's honestly not that bad. Like it looks a lot more intricate than like the difficulty level is for knitting it, because you're just following a chart. Like if you know how to read a chart, you're totally fine. Very potato chippy and it's really intuitive, but I did make a mistake of not putting enough stitch markers in, because I was like, oh, it's so intuitive, I can just see where I'm going, and then I kept making mistakes, so I put in some stitch markers. I have the prettiest little stitch markers here. They're like stunning pearly stitch markers, and then these ones are like gold with little pearls on there as well, and they are both from Hand-Dyed Harmony. These ones I think I bought myself, and then these little pearly ones she's like really kindly sent me as a gift. They are stunning. I absolutely love her stitch markers. And she also sent me these lovely needle stoppers. In my last video where I talked about like my knitting tools and stuff, I actually spoke about needle stoppers, that I've never really needed them. I don't think they're a necessity at all, but they have been very useful for this project. It's lace and I stick my needles through the yarn, and with this project for some reason I think the yarn is quite slippery on the needles. I kept like dropping my stitches off the needles, so these have been very useful for that. They're a lot more sturdy than like they look. They really don't come off easily, like you have to really pull on them. And then also you don't need like specific sizes, which I thought you did for needle stoppers. They're one size and they fit these ones. Obviously you would probably need bigger ones for like larger needles, but for like smaller sizes I think they're all like pretty much the same and they fit perfectly. It's just like this really beautiful little flower and a beautiful little leaf, and I just think they look so adorable with this project. They just match the vibe absolutely perfectly, especially with these lovely pearly stitch markers. I'm just in love with those. I think Hand-Dyed Harmony has like ignited my love for pretty stitch markers. When you're knitting on a project, and like if you can get pretty stitch markers, they're not a necessity at all, but if you can like splurge out on them, I find it very like dopamine releasing when I'm knitting and I'm like, oh, pretty stitch marker, it's so cute. Just so aesthetically pleasing when I'm knitting on this little scarf. There's beautiful lace and then I've got these beautiful stitch markers, got my cute little needle stoppers. It just gives me a lot of happiness, especially like during exam and endpoint assessment season. It's been a lot and this has been just so helpful. I also really love the chart structure of this pattern. Some patterns just have like the chart, it's like square writing paper, like in like school notebooks. This one actually is more like graph paper, so it will have like thicker lines. You can see it in like quadrants rather than everything at once, which is really nice because it's easier to like find yourself within the pattern. You've got kind of like checkpoints, so for example these like pearl stitches, I find them a lot easier to knit the lace because I'll count the number of stitches near them and then I don't have to like count every part of the lace. It was getting a little bit long once I got to the like last part of the chart when I was increasing, but now that I'm decreasing it's really fun again, getting shorter and shorter each time. I'm so excited to finish this piece and to be able to wear it in the fall because it's getting a bit too warm now. My next work in progress is my absolute pride and joy. I think I have found the perfect pink coloured yarn like ever and I'm so in love with it. This is knitted in Knitting for Olive Merino in the colour Dusty Rose. It's this really stunning pink colour and it looks quite cute with my nails, accidentally kind of matching. The name is perfect. I've gotten so many compliments on this colour while I've been knitting on it. Whenever people see me knitting on it, they're like, oh my god, this colour is so stunning, and I agree. It is absolutely adorable. I bought this yarn as well when I was at Beautiful Knitters. I really wanted to see what it looks like because on the Knitting for Olive website it looks really warm toned, but in real life it's very neutral but cool leaning. I'm holding this yarn double and I actually met gauge on the suggested needles. I'm knitting the April cardigan. You can probably tell that's my favourite cardigan pattern. April cardigan by Petite Knit, and it's such a lovely and fun pattern to knit. It's just the most fun stockinette whip ever. The yarn held double. I'm literally holding 2 strands of Knitting for Olive Merino. It's a lot more chunky and bulky than I expected. It has a lot less drape than I was like hoping for. I thought it would be as drapey as my Drops Flora held with Drops Kid Silk, but it's still nice. I think it will still look cute as a cardigan, and I really like how dry feeling it is. It's not like going everywhere like mohair is, and I think it's going to be the perfect spring cardigan. I'm expecting this yarn not to pill too much. Like I've heard really good things. I've heard that it holds up really well and it does feel really sturdy. It feels soft like merino, but obviously it doesn't feel as flimsy as merino held with mohair. I'm just always a bit scared with those pieces, but this one I'm going to be a lot less scared with it. But I love the colour so much. I just can't get over how stunning it is. I'm knitting size small of this because I did check my gauge this time. Originally when I knit this pattern I have not checked my gauge and I went for a medium just in case. This time my gauge does match the pattern and I think it's pretty perfect. Like, I do wanted it to be quite tight fitting so it looks nice and just like fits my body nicer, and I was a little bit worried it would be too tight around my shoulders because that tends to be like my issue area with knits, but it seems to be like perfectly fine. These are clanking. I think with the button band it will be even better, but already I'm just so in love with this knit. I think it's going to be the perfect like spring and summer cardigan. I mean, I'll probably wear it all year round, but it's just so stunning. Even though it's quite a simple pattern, it does have a really interesting shoulder construction. It's kind of like a saddle shoulder, but not really, because you knit it as you would a raglan. Maybe it's contiguous, but the contiguous part is very wide here. It's a really cool construction, and I would really recommend this pattern because it looks stunning. It's really fun to knit. It's really easy to follow as well. Now that I've knit like several of these, I think this might be like a yearly knit for me now because I'm just so in love with it. In my previous podcast I mentioned I get holes in my raglan increases. It's happening here as well. Not quite as bad, probably because of the yarn, but especially the first raglan stitch, it looks really bad for some reason. Like, it's very holey. I'm not sure why that happens, and like one side always looks worse. Like this side, it's got holes essentially. Some people in the comments have suggested that maybe I'm doing the increases wrong, so they were saying that I might not be like knitting through the back loop or something, but I did like watch a few videos just to double check, and I do in fact knit it like the way they're meant to be knitted, the way knitting tutorials say to knit them. Let me know whether you have the same problem. Let me know whether you have possibly some solutions to this problem. It doesn't bother me that much, but it's a lot more visible in like bulky yarn. I don't have that problem that badly when I'm not knitting it as a raglan. Maybe like the stitches just pull on each other. I'm not sure. Like, it's not that visible here. I cannot decide on the buttons for this cardigan. Today, actually, I was looking for some buttons for my peacock cardigan, and I have also gotten these. My town is very small and places don't like taking card payments because obviously they're like small businesses, so they have to get charged more for card payments. The minimum payment was like, he was being very kind and he said, okay, £1. I was like, £1? How much are these buttons then? And they were like 50p for like a set of 5 buttons, and I was like, oh, that's insane, because I think they were like 10p a button. So I was like, okay, I'll buy some more buttons, and I also got some of these pretty pink buttons, which are very similar to the ones that I bought for the peacock cardigans. They're just slightly bigger. And then I also got these silly little flower pink buttons. They're very cute as well. They're slightly lighter. I can't decide which ones I would go for. I've always been a little bit against knitting vlogs because I find that people put way too much music in them and it's not like any yapping, and I like watching them while I'm knitting, so I do like actually having stuff in the background rather than listening to annoying music. I know, I'm throwing so much shade right now. And then I have started watching Natasha Crawford's vlogs. They are so fun. I feel like she strikes the perfect balance between the music and the yapping, and she like talks about her life and stuff but in like a really fun way. I thought maybe I could knit this cardigan while doing like a little project vlog, and I ended up going on holiday with my partner and his family, and then by the time I finished this yoke, I didn't have any like yapping footage because I was only like doing b-roll stuff. Yeah, it was not really a holiday where I could be like talking to a camera and stuff, but let me know whether you'd be interested in like knitting vlogs in the future, because I might do some. They sound really fun, and they sound like a really fun way to like update on life and stuff rather than talking about it in podcasts, because obviously podcasts, I like them to be very knitting related. I really appreciated having this project on that trip because whenever I travel I really like having a very simple stockinette knit. I also took the poet scarf with me, but it was a lot harder to knit on that while traveling because I just wanted to knit, and this was like the perfect balance between interesting and like easy. You didn't have to focus too much, you just knit to a marker and then you increase, so it's not that much effort. You don't have to look on a chart and it's really easy to memorize. The increases last quite a long time, so you're repeating the same thing over and over again for quite a while. And I think we were in Venice this for like 5 days, and I was just knitting this whenever we were in like a cafe or eating or like drinking or something. Obviously we were walking around a lot, so I didn't get that much knitting time. At the end of the holiday I was already like joining in the round, which was crazy to me. So far it's such a fun knit, and I really love knitting cardigans. I don't like purling, but I find that the body goes by a lot quicker when it's knitted flat, because I don't get sleeve island, but I do get body island on like normal knits. When I'm knitting on the stockinette, I'm like, oh okay, now I'm doing a purl row, now I'm doing a knit row, rather than it all just being kind of samey. All projects are for different moods, so it's nice having multiple whips for me. My final work in progress is actually not a knitting project, but it's a crochet project. I've spoken about these actually in my last video because I had my first sponsor, which was Hooks and Needles. This video is not sponsored at all, I haven't got an affiliate link or anything, but I did want to continue these because they are actually really cute. Initially this was meant to be like a glasses pouch thing, but my gauge has turned out way too big, so now I think this is going to be coasters, and this is the first one I crocheted. I haven't had a chance to crochet any more since, but my aunt has seen my story on Instagram where I posted this. She really liked these, so I was like, oh, would you like me to make you some? Because I really wanted to use up this yarn and I wanted to do some more crochet, and this was a really fun pattern to follow. Originally the pattern was saying to use these two colours together, but I preferred the pink that they included, and I thought it was like a really pretty dusty pink. It's a little bit more warm tones than I usually like, but it was still like really pretty, and I feel like as coasters it would be adorable. But my aunt really likes blue. This is the colour I'm gonna crochet the coasters in. If I have some leftover white yarn, I might make myself some more of these pink ones because they're adorable. And this is Merino Majesty. This blue is the colour 14607. This one is 9781493. I really like this pink, it's really pretty. I wish it was a little bit more cool toned, but actually you can see the colour a little bit better with the knitting frol of merino. It's very like chunky. It's really nice to crochet for beginners. Normally I don't like gift knitting. I really want a lot of knitted pieces, and I haven't had like many clothes in the past. Finally, like I'm an adult and I can buy myself things that I like. I want to knit things for myself until I have like a nice wardrobe of things that I can like rotate between. But I really love gift knitting when it just comes from me. Like when my aunt messaged me, I just had like this urge to be like, oh yeah, would you like me to make you some? Yeah, I really like gift knitting in that sense, when it's like not really forced. Let me know how you feel about gift knitting. Are you big gift knitters, or do you prefer just knitting for yourself? I have a whip that I'm frogging. If you've seen my previous podcast episodes, you would have seen this sock start. It's this really pretty pattern. These are Autumn Savoury by Limpida. This pattern is so hard, and my friend Anne-Sophie has also tried this out. I think the lace charts are a little bit wrong because we both have the same issue where the lace charts just don't match up with your knitting. I wanted these to be like an easy pair of knitting that I can do during my lunch times while I'm like watching silly videos on YouTube, because my work is very antisocial. I just wanted to knit these on my lunch breaks, but they ended up being really hard to knit on. I think I'm going to frog these unless any of you have knitted them in the past. If you've had the same issues, I would love to find out. I love the yarn. I actually used this for a pair of socks for my partner that I've gifted him for Christmas, I think. This is the West Yorkshire Spinners signature 4-ply in the colour Poppyseed. It's this really stunning grey. I actually used it to sew on the buttons on my peacock cardigan because it's very similar to the knitting frol of Dusty Moose, but this is a little bit more grey, whereas this is a little bit more brown grey. And I think you can't really tell that the buttons have been sewed on with sock yarn. It's my favourite sock yarn ever. It is very like solid. It doesn't pill as much as other sock yarns. It doesn't felt. So I really need to figure out what sock I want to knit with this. I've kind of lost my sock knitting mojo this year, I think, because I want to focus on garments a lot more. Maybe I'll get my sock mojo back in the autumn. If you know of similar patterns. I would love to hear maybe ones that are like slightly easier to follow, something that's like as easy as stockinette but not quite so boring. Like I just don't want like a plain stockinette sock, but I don't want to put too much effort into like lacy socks, and I also want this yarn to be quite visible. It looks really pretty in the stockinette, whereas like on this it doesn't look quite as good, whereas this looks just really smooth, and this colour is just so stunning, and I think it will be perfect to wear with like my Doc Martens. I've got two hibernating whips that I won't show you, but I've got my Monday sweater where I almost finished the body, and I've got my sweater number 8 where I have made zero progress, but those will be hibernating over the summer. It has been surprisingly warm for spring in the UK recently. I've not been able to knit on many mohair things. This was a struggle, and I think I finished it like when it was still not so warm. I don't think I'll be doing anything mohair related in the next few months. This is my only yarn acquisition. This is the Knitting for Olive cotton merino in the colour Purple Elephant. This yarn is so sadly discontinued because I want more of this yarn. Aunt Sophie was talking to me about it and she was showing me her yarn. I fell in love with this colour. Like initially when I saw it online I thought it was so ugly because it was really warm toned and it looked like a bruise kind of colour, but then she showed me what it looks like in real life, and obviously Knitting for Olive for some reason just cannot take pictures that don't look super warm toned. This is the most stunning purple I have ever seen in my life, even better than the purple unicorn that they do. Very muted. It's similar to the purple unicorn but a bit more muted, and it's kind of like a mixture between these two colours. It's been discontinued for like 6 months or like almost a year now. Don't quote me on that, I might be slightly wrong. I wasn't really interested in the past and I was so worried that I will miss out on this yarn, but I did find a shop and then I bought their entire stock, which was like 5 balls. I might be able to like crank out 2 summer tops out of that, I really hope, because it's just so pretty. I mentioned earlier that Handmade Harmony has sent me some stitch markers. She hasn't asked me to talk about them or anything, but obviously these are my acquisitions and I absolutely love the ones that she sent me. So happy with them. I think I would have bought these anyway if she hadn't sent them to me. I've got this little beautiful heart that I was knitting with on my ruffle socks because it's just so cute. I really like how it's like slightly pearly on the inside. And I've got these two. One of them is like this pretty flower and it actually matches the needle stopper that I have, and a pretty purple gem, and a little carriage which just makes me feel like a princess. They're just so adorable. I was in this beautiful knitters store and I saw these stitch markers by the till. I've been contemplating buying them for a little while because I think I saw them there last time I went. This time I thought peacock stitch marker would match my Dusty Rose merino so well, and I was knitting on it and I was like, haha, it's a peacock. I think this is actually a gyoza because it was like Asian food set. They are the tastiest food on the planet. Let me know if you've ever tried them. My favourite ones are pierogi ruskie, Russian pierogi, but they're not actually Russian. They have nothing to do with Russia. I think it's probably because potatoes and cheese, so. In the same set I got these two, and it's a bao bun and a thingy that I don't actually know the name of, and Knit with Juliet actually mentioned to me that her friend thinks it's something, but I can't remember the name of it, so I will pop it on the screen. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you in the next ones. Bye!